Welcome to the Rusty Hook Kayak Fishing Podcast, bringing you fishing tips, gear reviews, tournament news, and more. Featured guests from all over the nation. Now, 1 hour of live streaming via Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Here's your host, John Rapp. Hey guys, welcome to the Rusty Hook Kayak Fishing Podcast. Hey, it's John Rapp here. Episode 30 of Season 2. We talked about last week when we had Chris on and said, hey man, what do you want to talk about next week? And he said crank baits. Specifically, Chris wants to hit and teach and talk about deep cranking. And I reached out to a few fellas that I know here in West Virginia that are heavy duty fishermen, and they are power fishermen. They can throw a crankbait like no other people that I know. Very successful on the scenes here in state and out of state. Both of them have either won or been in the top 5 with Hobie or KBF or Bass Nation. And so let's bring these fellas online here with you. If you are online with us tonight, this will be uploaded shortly to Anchor FM, and I don't know if you guys heard that, but one heck of a thunderstorm is blowing by here in Raleigh County. So if by chance my feed stops or quits, then that would be the reason why we've had a power outage. But make sure you hit that like, share, follow button, subscribe to the show. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We're live right now on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. So make sure you comment. Comments should scroll to the bottom left there underneath the Rusty Hook emblem, and maybe we can see that and answer your questions or give you a shout out. So without further ado, let's bring on our peeps. So you're looking at top left is myself, and we've got Mark Edwards to the top right. Bottom left is Chris Payne. And bottom right is Rick Garvalia. So guys, welcome to the show. Well known for what you guys do here. Appreciate you. And let's get started. So Chris, lead the way, brother.
All right. So it's summertime, and for folks like me who fish highland reservoirs, which basically means you've got water that's 25, 30, 40, 50, 60 feet deep. Summertime, it can be hard to find fish outside, after 8 a.m. or, any time after 8 a.m. From the early morning bite. And so what I do is I turn to deep cranking. Now, there are a lot of people who do that differently, but specifically what I like to do with deep cranking is I got to locate the fish first. So electronics and good electronics are your friend if you're doing that. Otherwise, you're just going to be working out your forearms all day. So you got to find the fish. So what does that look like? Well, on your sonar in the summertime, when you are looking for bass, typically they're going to be hugging the bottom in a certain depth of water. You've got to figure out where your thermocline is, where your oxygen is, what your water temps are. But if you're just scanning, I would start scanning in 20 foot of water and work 20, 30, and 40 foot of water if you've got it. If you are in a shallower body of water where maybe 30 feet deep is the deepest that you get, check maybe 15 to 20. But I wouldn't go any shallower than that. And then what you're going to be looking for on your graph is what we call turtles on a log. So I drew a quick sketch to kind of show you what that looks like. And so as you've got the bottom here, you're going to have like these little football looking dudes that are going to be hugging the bottom right there. Those are typically going to be bass. So, so how do you get them to bite? Well, you got to have the setup. So first off, you got to have something that's going to be able to get down to them. So whatever your depth is, you're going to have a crankbait that'll get down to them. Deep diving crankbaits don't have to be bigger in the body, but they do have to be bigger in the bill to be able to get them down. So depending on what you like, I prefer like a river to sea, the Tactical Bassin DD crankbait. It's a great one because it's not a massive body crankbait. It's about the size of larger shad and smaller bluegill. 3 to 4 inches at the most. There are a lot of guys that throw like a 10XD from Strike King. Quite frankly, I I don't have arm strength to do that all day, every day. That is a heavy bait. I think it's like 2.5 ounces. And if I'm gonna speed crank, which we'll talk about, um, that is not the bait to do that with.
That's a good place to start
So,
there, man. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking, um, what you've talked about how you would target 15 feet down. So give us an idea of what your setup would be that you would use to get your bait down there. Rod, reel, line.
yeah, so I want a crankbait rod, specifically because you're going to be fishing treble hooks from a distance, and if you have a stiff rod, you're not going to be able to land those hooks in the jaw if you're fishing with a broomstick. I see a lot of guys go out and get an extra heavy swim bait rod and throw that 10XD on it, and it does not have the action to be able to land those treble hooks and keep them pinned. Um, I've even seen guys rip, you know, rip holes in fish or rip their lips like literally right off by using the wrong thing. So if I'm deep cranking, typically I like something in like a 7.3 to 7.11 frame for a crankbait rod. I like a moderate fast with a medium action. Um, I know that sounds kind of weird, but in that size and everything, it's going to be able to get your lure down. You're going to have some bend in the rod when you're bringing it back through, but it's going to help you pin those fish, and you will feel it the first time that you hook up with one of those fish. Um, if you think about it, like if you've ever seen fishing shows where they're trolling planer boards for big salmon or something like that up north, you'll notice that the parabolic bend in those rods, that's there for a reason, right? Because you're fishing way off. You're not fishing close up. So it's way different than jig fishing. So Shimano X Pride makes an excellent one, but those run about 279 to 329. If you're looking for something a little further down the column that is a little less expensive, there are some good models from Daiwa, Blues, Fenwick, and St. Croix. Probably the St. Croix glass crankbait rod in the Mojo series
Yeah.
is an affordable one. It's a great performer. It's easy to throw. Um, you just kind of have to be ready for it. For me, it's different than the X Pride. If you're used to an X Pride, it's going to suck throwing it because it feels as big around as a broom handle compared to what the X Pride is at the same size. But once you get used to it, you figure out that it's got a better parabolic bend to be able to get those hook sets in. And so it's the way that the rods are manufactured with different philosophies on it, but both are good. I think the Mojo Bass or the Mojo Crank run 149-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, 149, 159, something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a sweet price point for that. Any less than $100, it's not really a cranking rod. Somebody's just putting a label on something to convince you to buy it. So it's not built with the technology that you need in a cranking rod typically, like 99 times out of 100. There may be one that I've missed, but all the ones that I've seen are built on the same blanks that they would build a medium heavy something out of.
So what's your preferred line?
So preferred line for deep cranking, I like a copolymer. So I've been using a copolymer from Yozuri, which is dirt cheap. Like you can buy 500 yards full of it for $20 or something like that. But I've been beating the crap out of that stuff since it came out, and I just like it. It's the best of both worlds. It's got a little bit of mono feel to it. It's got a little bit of fluoro feel to it. It does better in the zebra mussels that we have here at the Jagged Rock than just some of the other straights. And it kind of gives me the best of both worlds. It's not a floating line like a mono is, and so I can get those crankbaits down a little bit deeper, but it's
Right.
not as quite as rigid as a straight fluoro is. So I like that Yo-Zuri, that copolymer mix, and
Okay.
I haven't had any issues. And then for the reel, so I do a lot of speed cranking, and I have moved away. I know it's not popular, but I've moved away from 5-to-1 and 5.3-to-1 ratio reels. I don't own any anymore. The slowest I have is a 6.2, and if I'm speed cranking, I'm throwing an 8-to-1 gear ratio, because my goal is to make a really long cast and keep letting line out while I'm pedaling away from it. And I want to get about 100 yards of line out if I can. If I can get that far away from it, and then I'm gonna yank that thing back into me as fast as I can get it down, because it's gonna get the bait down, and it's gonna make those fish fire up. Doesn't always work, nope, because sometimes fish just won't fire up. But what I have found is that if I am speed cranking in the summertime, I will be more likely to get fish fired up and active than if I just am dragging it slowly through a school. Because what I found, like a common way that people fish crankbaits is they want to make sure it's dragging the bottom, reaction strike. And so if there's no trees or anything, it's going to be the bottom, and you want it to hit the bottom. But if you're moving that slower, sometimes the fish just move off from it, right? But if it's fast moving and bouncing off of stuff, it's like a cat, trying to chase a laser on a wall, or, a feather toy or something like that, because they feel like, oh, you're trying to flee from me, and then it activates that predator response, and they're like, nope, not today, and then they come up and crush it. That's why I really like speed cranking.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I do. I know it's different, and not a lot of people fish that way. But I have had more luck over the last couple of years doing that than I have just traditional dragging a deep crankbait.
Sounds good. Mark?
I'm gonna go over some of the lures and stuff I use. I mean, cause there's so many different deep crankbaits. Like he said, he liked the tactical bassin one, and I'm more of an old school one. I have speed crank, but I'm still my reel is a 5-0-1. And I use mono. But one of the keys too also is a rod, and I think the ones that Chris actually mentioned, he actually uses the X Pride's actually fiberglass, or not fiberglass, but actually graphite, right, Chris? And then the Mojo's actually fiberglass, and I use a fiberglass because I don't care about the feel, to be honest with you, as much as I want the fish just to load up. I think with the fiberglass, it's so slow reaction that you don't know that you even got a fish on sometimes. I fight leaves, sticks, and then for a while before I ever realized I got a stick. But when I got a fish, I mean, it's always, it keeps the fish pinned up better. And there's been times where I've been on a kayak tournament and I've switched to a deep crankbait, and like Chris was saying earlier, I put it on a flipping stick. It's a carrot stick's what it is, but it's a real soft rod tip, and I thought I'd be all right. And I hooked a big fish, and it jumped up and spit it. So you got to have the right equipment for deep cranking. If you're really straight deep cranking, you got to have the right equipment.
Yeah.
And I'll use mono. I crank with mono. Fluorocarbon's probably what 90% of people use, because it sinks, and it's got less stretch. So like actually, if you got less stretch and then you're using a fiberglass rod, it kind of makes up for. And then like where I use mono and a fiberglass rod, I got a lot of stretch in there.
Yeah.
So you really have to set the hook. I mean, I set the hook when I really think I got one. I'll pull, and then I'll kind of like really pull when I think I'm fighting one. But also really like you really got to look at drop. I mean, I like drop offs and points and stuff like that. To find on the lake. Or really around here in West Virginia, Bluestone I've caught some 6XD at Bluestone, and a Stonewall. You can really, really crank some big fish at Stonewall. Whereas Stonewall has a bunch of standing timber and a lot of points. It's really long and got a lot of points, but you can crank the standing timber too.
Bounce it around. And
real big fish. You got to bounce it off. You could crank right by 1,000 of them and not get bit. But if you run it into them, that's when you're usually going to get bit. And I got a bunch of I mean, really, the 6XD, man, that's my go-to if I'm deep cranking. It's hard to beat. You can see this thing's all scarred up.
Hell yeah.
And I changed the hooks out, man. I actually put a bigger size hook on them. And two, it's an old school. It's a DD22, Norman DT22. These things are hard to beat, but the Strike King. Oh, I just crashed my box.
I think it's time.
Anyway,
Are you trying to tell me to go to a commercial break?
No. But if you look here with a 6XD, man, it dives so much faster. And they got this little curve right here on the bill, and I've got old school. Well, I dumped them out, but here's an old school. This is a 6XD, and this is just a 5 straight. And the XD bends up. Well, what an XD does is it dives deeper, faster.
So
and that's the key. That's a big key to it.
So with these numbers that you're talking about, with like 6XD and 5 whatever straight, are for the audience and letting everybody know, does that indicate the depth, or is that just a code for those type of things?
No, it's just a code. You go to Rapala. Now Rapala actually, and I throw Rapala too. I mean, I throw everything. But the deal was with Rapala, they got like it's the DT10, and it goes to 10 foot. Strike King is a 6XD, runs around 18 foot. It depends on your line and stuff. It varies. And the 5XD is more of a 12 foot range. And but the deal with the Rapala is like a Strike King's pretty loud. They got rattle in them, so they're really loud. So if a fishing lake's like got a lot of pressure, like if you're at Guntersville or somewhere that everybody's cranking and they've seen a million crankbaits, the DT is better off. It's an old balsa. It's silent. It doesn't have no noise in it. So it's pretty much like finesse fishing, deep cranking. And plus the bill, you look, it's not very wide, so you can reel them pretty fast. And a 6XD is what I've speed cranked it before, but you can see the width of the bill is a lot bigger.
Yep.
than the DT series. And which I really like. I've gotten into throwing the wood crankbaits now more than anything, just because of the pressure. I think fishing pressure and fish feel it. And I have really good luck with quiet crankbaits, the silent type. And actually, and don't be scared to throw bright collars. I dump these out. Yeah, right here's what we got going on.
Yeah.
Got a problem right there, but
well, I think Chris has covered that.
The bright collars. There's a spoon, but here's an old Pose. I think it's a 300 or 400. But you can't really see the collar. That's a chartreuse there.
Yeah, like
but it's really, really bright. It's the same color as this, and this is a DT series. They don't make anymore. It's a flat DT series, and I have done really, really well in tournaments on this. This is a really, really good bait.
Awesome.
But the brighter collars, when past 10 foot or so, the fish can't see near as good.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times if you throw something real bright, and like Chris is doing, it's just a reaction strike. You're getting a reaction strike. I mean, these fish,
I think
they're predators. They want to eat.
Yeah, as Chris has covered it in previous shows, is when the deeper it goes, the light filters change, and it makes those colors a little different color. When Chris, I want you to touch on it when we come back. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll let Rick jump in, chime in on his thoughts, and then we'll catch up with Chris and touch base on colors too. So we'll be right back.
Payne Outdoors, Straight Talk, an outdoor product analyst and custom soft plastic maker. Check out our reviews and products at our website at payneoutdoors.com.
Feel Free Kayaks, something for everyone. Pedal, paddle, or power, we can outfit you to meet your needs. For more information, visit Feel Free UN.
Yak Gadget offers all kinds of kayak accessories such as motor mounts, anchor systems, and other track-based items to make your time more enjoyable on the water. Visit their Facebook page, search Yak Gadget.
Guggen Brothers Custom Tackle specializes in jigs and Ned-style lures. Brothers who know what it takes to put fish in the boat. Check out their Facebook page. Search Guggen. All right, hey guys, we're back. Season 2, episode 30, and we're talking crankbaits. We've covered a lot of information in the last 25 minutes. Hey, Tim Isaacs, Heath Mullins, Randy Newton, and Mike and Ridenhour. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We got 4 folks watching us here now. So guys, just to let you know, we've got a panel of experts on the show here. Top left is myself. On the right, we have Mark Edwards. Bottom left, Chris Payne from Payne Outdoors, and then bottom right, Rick Garavaglia. We've heard from Chris and Mark. Let's let Ricky have the stage for a minute, and Rick, tell us what you think. A few things that tips, tricks, and stuff.
Yeah. Well, what I think so far is I'm learning a lot of stuff already. 7 years ago, I think I caught my first crankbait fish. It was April 1st on Burnsville Lake, and I was throwing an old white Rebel square bill, and I was using a 7'11" Skeet Reese Magnum crankbait rod. It was a broomstick, and I caught. It was a stormy kind of come and go day, and I was nailing fish. I mean, 4.5 pounders is the biggest fish I ever caught at the time, and I got excited about crankbait fishing. So it's something that's hard for me to put down. And I've switched rods over the time. I went with Enigma for a little bit with their Atomic 29s. Actually, their HPTs, whenever they come out with crank rods, they were a carbon rod. Then they come out with Atomic 29, it's fiberglass. And now I'm using 6-gill rods. They're cranking series, and a couple others that I'm going to be trying out at some point. But learning things like that is I think the first thing, you can't be afraid to lose your crankbait. A lot of people won't have them in their tackle box. They spent some money on them, and they're just afraid to throw them because they don't want to lose that. I've been throwing the Strike Kings, the same ones that Mark was showing us. I have some of the Rapalas, the down to 10 feet deep ones, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that. I find myself in between the two of them with the line, as when I learned about fluorocarbon, when I learned that mono wasn't the only line in the world, and learned about braid, I started watching people like Tactical Bassin and figuring out things, listening to some of the old pros talking about the different lines. And so I started throwing the fluorocarbon, and I found, I went from Vicious line, tried that for a while. Then I went to this Berkeley Vanish, and that's just where I settled in and what I'm familiar with. I'm excited to try some of these other kinds, but can't be afraid to lose the crankbait. I do prefer the silent ones if at all possible. It's a lot of the deep ones, the more affordable ones, are the ones you find on sale. They're going to have rattles in them. So I'm branching out and trying some of that. Over the 4th of July weekend, I found myself kind of throwing mid-diving crankbaits and catching them on points or along rock ledges and stuff on Stonewall Jackson with crankbaits, and just burning it by there. And they were reacting. With all the boat traffic, I then moved in on a mud line and was cranking through there as fast as I could and nailed some fish. So those are just some of the things I think of. I'm still learning how to use my electronics. So in the wintertime or in the springtime, when the waters come to the lake that I'm fishing, as the water's coming up, and I'll mark stumps and rock ledges and have waypoints that I go back to in the summer. And I know how deep they are. I know where they're at. and I'll just crank through them. I'll just try them out. If I'm not getting anything flipping or whatever, I go to points and my waypoints that I've been successful with in the past, and just bring something through them like that. So I think that's that's what I've got. I mean, just throw it, and learn how to throw it, and don't be afraid to experiment with different lines or rods, and find what works for you.
Chris?
Yeah. So all that. That's all good information. If you're going to try to be a crankbait fisherman, you need to go to your local sporting goods store and buy a $4 plug knocker, and make your heart feel better about throwing that crankbait. Usually they've got one like shaped like a little fish or something like that. It's got 2 little loops on it or whatever. That's got a whole bunch of like, I don't know, string, nylon string tied to it. And basically you just loop it on your line and send it down there, and it'll pop those things off of whatever they're stuck on. But that'll make you feel a lot better when you get a few lures back. It makes it a lot easier. If you're just, every time you get hung up, if you're just cutting those off, and that's how you turn a billionaire into a millionaire. So get you a plug knocker. Color-wise, man, I'm right on there with Bart. I think probably my favorite colors to throw, well, I have 2 colors that I throw almost exclusively. I have a chartreuse with a blue back, which I absolutely love, and I have a white pearl. And yeah, boom, right there. So those are my go-to. Every now and again in February, I'll throw a red craw crankbait, a little bit shallower, just because the crawfish are moving in the smallmouth, and largemouth get real angry at them. But other than February, I'm throwing probably a chartreuse blueback and a white pearl. Yeah, is that a bomber Model A?
No, this is the old Hot Lips.
Oh, Hot Lips. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I got you.
Now, who makes that, Mark?
Lure Jensen. They were one of the first actually deep diving cranks to come out. They're really nice, but the only negative to these, they dive deep. They got the XD deal going on. You can see it there.
Yeah.
They dive really fast, but the negative is they only weigh a quarter ounce. You can't hardly cast them. And you need a long rod. Long rod's really, really important.
Yeah.
The longer your bait's in the strike zone, the more your chance of catching a fish.
That's why I like long lining. I'm sure that once people hear this, they're going to be like, you let 100 yards of line out. But, until it became illegal, a lot of the elites that were cranking were doing that. They would bomb a cast as far as they could and then pull away from it, with the trolling motor. And then they crank it down because it does exactly that. It stays at maximum depth much longer, because you're going to have, an inverted parabolic curve that's going to show, you're actually only at maximum depth X amount of time. So the longer it is from point A to point B, the longer you're at that depth for that curve. And so, yeah, long rod. I like a heavier crankbait. I like a half-ounce plus crankbait, those quarter-ounce. That's why I struggle with balsa crankbaits sometimes, is because they're pretty light for the most part. That, and I tend to bang them into rocks if I'm fishing riprap, and after a few of those, they might explode a little bit. But plastic will do that too if you hit it just right. Break it off where the bill connection is and just explode them. But yeah, those are the colors that I use.
Rick, I know you.
Mark talked about.
Yeah, I know Rick had some success down at Lake Murray last year with crankbaits on his little point next. What were you throwing there, and how was it? Speed? Was it depth? What was your style that was successful there?
Well, it was just a strange find, because it was 42-degree water, I think, that day, and I was square billing on a point on a shell bed that was in like less than 2 feet of water.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't fast. It was kind of bringing it through there. It was a Strike King 1.5 hard knock and like a watermelon green something or other, and it just worked. It was just a magical day. It was meant to be.
Okay.
If that's my only victory, then you know,
Hey.
it was a lot of fun.
Win's a win, baby. Mark, now
Yeah.
I know you had some success with Bass Nation, but last one I think you did all your stuff with the Ned rig. But have you had success with the cranks over there when you were in Texas?
No, the last few years, honestly, the last few years I haven't had much success with cranking. Everything to me is situational, man.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's the right situation, I'll throw it. But ever since I've been kayak fishing, when I bass boat fished, I cranked a lot. I cranked a lot. But the deal with cranking too is like I said earlier, points and stuff. So a bass boat, I could go fish a bunch of points, and with the kayak, you're limited just to a couple places, or
Right.
you're limited to less places.
You can't get as far around the lake as you can.
Yeah. And then also when you're kayak fishing, you're deep cranking. I mean, these baits, they'll move your kayak. I mean, while you're cranking, your kayak will be moving.
Yeah, I've noticed my nose will
Sure.
it will turn toward the bait when I'm. So and that's
Yeah,
another thing, you got to make sure your boat's in a good position for a hook set. So if you're turning, you got to throw it so you can turn toward the fish, and hopefully you're able to do a good hook set.
Yeah, some of these baits are really hard to reel. I mean, they're especially like the DD22, and a lot of the older baits are harder to reel. These newer baits, this is a Profound Outdoors, and this is my favorite color, citrus shad. It's got the white and the chartreuse on the back. I mean, dude, it works everywhere. Citrus shad is really the only color I throw most of the time deep cranking, to be honest with you.
Now is that in
Unless it's super
all
clear.
year, or just summertime?
Well, I mean, I don't deep crank unless it's summertime, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I don't deep crank in the winter or nothing, or even the spring. I'm shallow in the spring. Yeah, summertime's really the only time that I deep crank.
Yeah, which
But
is
but these they're just a little bit narrower here, and where they're a little bit narrower, it allows you to reel. It's less pressure when you're reeling, so makes it come back a lot easier. It's easier on the fisherman, and then you can actually speed it up. I mean, it's going to come to the water faster, and it's just a reaction strike's what it is. I mean,
yeah. So it's not like
when you're cranking.
so there's not a need for a huge hook set, because with the fiberglass and the stretchy line, they're gonna set the hooks themselves pretty much, or especially with speed
No,
crank.
I mean, no, that with the softer rod and stuff, I mean, it gives the less, they actually, what happens is you're hoping that they engulf it a little more, they eat
Right.
it a little better.
Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of it too, it depends on the brand and stuff. See, if you look at this one, I mean, this thing has a U right here. It's kind of like the XD deal. So it dives faster. And then it actually, the way the crankbait's made here, it's flat here. So it's actually really extending the bill out a little bit too, helping it get down. And this is a really, really good, it's a new bait, but it's really, really good. But it's also like the Strike King, it rattles too.
And I think my favorite part with the crankbait fishing is just that surprise. You don't have to do much. To me, I just lean into it and start reeling. And the medium action rods or medium heavy with the bigger lures, it does all the work. And I mean, you're cranking and you're working that way, but once the fish has it, just something about not having the big old yank in it, to set the hook and hope you did it right in the right timing. It's like it's done, and now you just get to enjoy reeling the fish in. But that to me, that's my favorite part of crankbait in general.
That's when I was at Lake Norman, I was throwing some square bills that would go 3 to 5 feet down, and I was using the Mojo glass rod. I caught 20 to 30, mostly spots, and those spots were just hammering it. Like Like I think it was Mark said that they would eat it instead of just nip at it, and you only catch the back lip. I mean, I had all 6 hooks buried up in that thing's those mouths. So, and another tip to all you guys out there: when you're throwing a crankbait on a kayak, use a net.
Yeah.
And have pliers.
Yeah, use a net and have pliers.
And maybe even cutters.
Yeah, don't reach down there and grab that fish while he's going crazy, and you'll end up with something in your hand. So use a net. Chris?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I use a net anytime I'm jerkbait fishing or crankbait fishing. I like the hooks come out of the fish before the fish ever leaves the net. I don't try to lip them while they have hooks in their face. Because they will put it in your hand, in your leg, in your crotch. They will put it anywhere they can. So something you brought up, nipping at it. If you're catching fish in the side of the mouth and the gill plate, that's a reaction bite. If you're catching fish, all the hooks are in their mouth and they're trying to engulf it like that, that's a feed. So those are very different. And so with a reaction bite like that, chances are they're also competing with other fish.
Okay.
So they're not just eating to eat as an opportunist. They're competing. They're doing this wolf pack thing, right? And so there are probably multiple fish down there. So if you catch
throw
one
back.
in the side and the gill, you best throw back there.
Yeah.
You need to be marking that stuff on your electronics fast and furious. Like 90% of my waypoints in my electronics are crankbait spots because nobody else is going to fish them. Like, it's not obvious. You're going to roll right over it and never know that there's a rock pile there, or there's an underwater point, or there's a bunch of tree laydowns or anything like that. And so you mark those spots, and people will look at me when I'm out in a kayak, and I'll be sitting out in 30 foot of water, and they're just shaking their heads like, what are you doing? And like, what you don't know won't hurt you. Now, let's talk about the nose of your kayak moving around. I have found it is significantly easier to make sure that you don't lose hookups and stuff. Point the nose where you are going to cast the lure, and use your rudder to position against the wind. You want to throw straight off the front, down the center line of your kayak. And so if you're going to crankbait fish and you got a GoPro in front of you and you've got a pedal drive and all of that, you need to work like out in your mind how you're going to cast to make that happen. Because if you're casting off the side and you're sidearm bombing casts under stuff and dragging it, like you're going to be turning either into your fish, which is going to cause you a bunch of slack, or away from your fish, which is going to pull the bait away from them. So if you can point it down the nose of it and then use your rudder to adjust for the wind and that kind of stuff, you're gonna have a lot better success rate.
Outstanding.
Chris, you said something about when they're swiping at it versus when they're inhaling it. One of the things that I was taught too, I mean, if you can see the different hooks here, these are KVD, Mustad, 2X, and they're turned in. I don't know if you can see that. They're turned in pretty good. That's when they're inhaling it. And then if they're swiping at it, these, I think this is a VMC hook on this 10 DT10, and they're not pointed in as much. So you gotta have the ability to switch. If they're swiping at it, you want something more open. If they're eating it, you got the right collar, the right action, the right whatever they're liking, and they're inhaling it, you want this. You want them turned in. So that's just one of the things that I'm learning and trying to experiment with.
And if you're on a big school and you've caught some off one collar and they all of a sudden quit biting, switch collars. That's really big. I mean, you switch collars a lot of times, and changing it from a silent, from a rattling one to a silent will catch them too.
Yeah,
Or throwing.
like
Go
new
ahead.
pizza at CC's buffet, man.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, you've been eating the pepperoni and you're kind of tired of pepperoni, and then they bring out that cheeseburger pizza, and you're like, okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
gotta have some of that.
Yeah. On Stonewall, when I would catch one or two on a point over 4th of July weekend with the crankbait, 10 foot of water, whatever, I would turn around when they quit biting, and I would throw in a Carolina rig with one of Chris's, the ringer is what I sent that picture of. I was throwing a ringer in there on a Carolina rig and mopping up, doing some mop up duty, and
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun. I mean, I know it's not deep cranking, but Seth Fider, he just did a video with Wired to Fish, and he marked using his electronics. He was teaching how to mark these these rock bars or rock whatever, and he would crank and he'd find where they were at, and he'd crank and crank and crank, and he'd catch them, and then whenever they stopped biting, he started throwing. I guess it was a Carolina rig or something in it the other day, but he was teaching that, so I put it to use over the 4th of July weekend. I was like, hot dog, it works.
Outstanding.
And with electronics is man, I don't know if you heard that thunder, but
I
man,
did.
it's starting to storm. But
Yep.
yeah, it almost hit the house.
You're getting it from where we just had it, Big Daddy.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. But what was I going to say?
With electronics.
Electronics.
Yeah. It's hard sometimes to see fish on your side imaging, but one way you can tell if they're a little bit suspended, you'll actually see black dots on your side imaging, and the black is actually the shadow of your.
Okay.
So that's the easiest way to see fish on the side imaging is actually the shadows of the fish. But too, when you see a shadow, that also means it's suspended too, that it ain't on the bottom. Because
Chris?
all these, as good as these electronics is, and if you're looking straight down on the fish, they got to be a little bit off the bottom for you to actually see them. If they're dead on the bottom, you can't. It just mixes with the bottom. It's too close.
Chris is anchoring and using a anchor trolley, an option too, to anchor.
It's an option. I don't like it. If I'm deep cranking, I'm in 30 foot of water. I
That's
don't
low.
want that much line out because if you get stuck, man, forget about it. And also, if you have to go chase a fish, forget about it because once you catch a 6 or 7 pound bass in a kayak on a crankbait that's 70 yards away from you, you need to be able to move to that fish.
Okay. Yeah.
Makes sense.
But if I'm fishing somewhere that's not as big of a body of water, or maybe it's not super wide, that might be an option. But I don't anchor much when I do that.
Okay. Yeah.
I've actually had it cost me a fish that cost me a good finish one time. With your anchor, and especially if you're fighting with like a crankbait or something, you just don't jerk them in the boat. You know what I'm saying? So what happened was I thought I had the fish, man, and I was just reeling him in easy. I got this guy, and all of a sudden he went straight into my anchor rope, and then the hook got caught on the anchor rope, and then he's flopping right in front of me. Yeah, I just
shook
lost
free.
him. And I didn't get a limit, and that one fish would have, yeah.
That sounds like Stonewall, first of the year.
Summersville, I lost my one fish on a crank. Yeah.
That was rough.
Hey, I appreciate you guys.
Three fish, and I was headed home, man. 3 fish, and I was headed home.
Great show tonight. Appreciate you. We're at 45-minute mark. Let's start closing it up. Closing thoughts, Chris?
I do recommend changing your hooks. Stock hooks on most crankbaits are absolute crap, and they will rust on you. So change your hooks, and if you're changing hooks, don't use your fingernails. Spend the 10 or 12 or 20 bucks and get some split ring pliers. Trust me.
Yeah, me and Rick got a really nice video out there from earlier in the year where Rick showed us how to change those. I'll put a link out there for you guys. Mark.
Yeah, just my big thing is make sure you use the right equipment. Like a crankbait rod is a must, and I also like shallow cranking. I got a medium. It's an old Bass Pro crankbait rod, and I love it. I mean, it's actually fiberglass and graphite mix. It's a composite rod, but it has the flex of the graphite, but then it's got a little bit of feel to it too. But no, I use that for shallow cranking. But you got to have the right equipment. Make sure you have the right equipment, and if you use fluorocarbon, make sure you check your line a lot, because if you're beating rocks and stuff, it'll mess up your line. You got to retie a lot.
Rick?
just have fun with it. I mean, you got to try it. You got to spend some time doing it. And yeah, I just think that you'll have a good time with it, but you got to try it. Stick with it for a while.
All right, guys.
Catches fish, big fish.
Looks like we lost Chris here. But anyway, I appreciate you guys for jumping in and helping out. And Mark, I believe we may need to bring you two guys back because I know Rick is a graph guy as well. But I think maybe here in the next few weeks or so, we ought to get together and throw up an episode on how to read a fish finder. Mark, are you pretty good with that?
Yeah, I mean, I've had side imaging since it first come out, since Gen 1.
Okay.
Yeah, so
If you're
and I
up
use
for it,
my fish finder. I mean, I like, see, that's one thing about a fish finder. You can find structure that people ain't looking at the bank and seeing. And that's a big key with the cranking. Like probably what Rick does. Rick probably sees a log off the bank, throws his crankbait down that log or a stump. Rock piles around here, I mean, you know, our lakes are a little different than everywhere else.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Really.
Well,
So,
All of ours are man-made, and yeah.
and structure is a big deal. I think we about got to have structure to catch a fish.
Yeah.
Appreciate you fellas. Y'all have a great night.
Well,
All
you
right,
too.
you too.
Night.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Going to wrap up our show. Appreciate these fine guys for jumping on tonight. So you can find the audio version of this we uploaded here shortly to Anchor FM, and hopefully while you're driving to and from work, you can listen to this. Appreciate Greg Kupfner and all the other fellows, Tim Isaacs, Garrett Hott, Clint Kistner, Shan Rubel, Tony Boland, and Mark and Deborah Huffman for jumping on and watching the show with us. Jason West, Philip Backus, Joe Farsons. Guys, thank you, and appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys tonight regarding deep cranking. On behalf of Chris, Mark, and Rick, we're going to close up shop tonight. Hey, I'm going to ICAST. Leaving Friday to go to Tennessee. Going to fish in Alabama. Going to fish Fellsmere in Florida. And going to do some deep sea fishing all between Friday and Tuesday. So make sure you look for me to post some video of my time out on the water. Be hanging out with the Paddle and Fin boys. It's going to be fun. So watch. If you're not doing anything here in the next 30 minutes, go to the Feel Free Fishing Team fishing page, and let's watch and learn about some stuff that's about to come out at ICAST. Little secrets here and there. Thank you for watching.